0614 local time. The eastern edge of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. carrier group is already cutting through the traffic lanes where every radar return gets a second look and nothing gets assumed. On the carrier's bridge, voices stay low. Wind drives hard across the island structure. Below, the flight deck runs its tight, practiced economy. Yellow shirts move without wasted motion. Deck crews position equipment with the deliberate rhythm of people who have done this thousands of times. Nothing in the scene suggests that in under 60 seconds, the entire formation will lock around a threat descending out of the morning haze. Inside Combat Information Center, the first indication is not something anyone sees. It is a low, unstable track bleeding along the edge of the surface return. Too fast for commercial traffic. Too low for anything routine. One radar operator leans into the display, another rechecks the bearing. The SPY radar paints the contact, drops it, then pulls it back as the object cuts through the noise generated by sea state and shoreline interference. Fast mover, low altitude, bearing 087. That gets the room's attention. Not alarm, not yet. Focus. A second track materializes seconds later, then a third. Now the arrangement starts to carry meaning. 3 separate high-speed returns are pushing in from the east, staggered just wide enough to avoid looking like formation flight, just close enough to suggest they know exactly where each other is. The tactical action officer steps up behind the radar console and watches the symbols firm up. Speed estimates rise. Altitude remains extremely low. Whoever is flying those aircraft is trying to stay buried in the radar picture for as long as the corridor will allow. From CIC, the first report goes up to the bridge. 3 fast movers inbound, low and closing. The officer of the deck does not overreact. He orders visual confirmation and holds the formation on its current heading while the escorts sharpen the air picture. General quarters is not called, not yet. But the right people are moving to the right places. Additional eyes go to the horizon. Every ship in the group begins the same sequence at once. Watching, measuring, building. 0616. The lead destroyer on the carrier's starboard quarter acquires the same tracks with better resolution. Electronic support measures come alive and begin listening to the signal environment. A cruiser further back in the screen narrows its scan. Data from across the group starts converging into one shared picture. That is when the uncertainty begins to collapse. These are not commercial aircraft. The approach is too fast, too flat, and too coordinated. A lookout on the carrier's island spots the first contact before most of the bridge crew does. Aircraft, low, starboard, binoculars come up. Out past the hard chop, a dark shape punches into view barely above the waterline, trailing heat blur, moving fast enough to throw a rippling shadow across the surface beneath it. A second aircraft appears farther out, offset north. The third rides slightly higher, still low by any reasonable measure, but positioned back enough to hold the whole approach in its field of view. The carrier group has eyes on them now. 3 Iranian fighter jets. They come in aggressive, nose low, using speed and angle rather than altitude to generate pressure. Sunlight strikes canopies in brief, hard flashes. Their spacing is deliberate. The lead aircraft pushes nearest, riding the formation's exposed edge. The second drifts wider as if building toward a crossing line. The third holds back, not passive, not disconnected, but positioned the way a pilot positions himself when he is waiting for the geometry to settle before deciding where to apply weight. On the flight deck, motion shifts immediately. Aircraft handlers stop anything that does not need to continue. A helicopter movement is waved off. Crewmen crouch lower near parked aircraft as the sound reaches the ship a beat after the visual. Not one sound. 3 separate engine signatures tearing across the morning air at the same time. Layered, violent, too low and too close for comfort. The lead Iranian jet crosses the formation's starboard side without releasing anything. It does not need to. The message is entirely in the distance it selects. Too tight for normal passage. Too deliberate for misidentification. Close enough that everyone watching understands exactly how thin the line is between a show of force and a catastrophe. Inside CIC, nobody wastes words. Track 1 crossing, Track 2 holding offset, Track 3 trailing, continue recording all emissions. The escorts keep feeding the picture. Range, bearing, speed, heading. The shared air display sharpens with every update. The carrier holds its course. That decision matters as much as anything else happening at this moment. So does the fact that no defensive system has released prematurely. This is controlled discipline under direct pressure. The precise capability a carrier group builds through years of training for exactly this kind of moment, where the margin between restraint and hesitation determines the next 10 minutes. 0619. The second jet tightens its line. Rather than pulling off cleanly, it banks left and drops even lower, angling toward the formation's outer screen. The third aircraft stops hanging back. It starts moving forward, no longer observing, beginning to push. The geometry is shifting. What initially read as a dangerous overflight is starting to take on a different shape. Something more structured, something being tested. On one escort, an electronic warfare operator catches the first meaningful change in the signal environment. A brief spike. A more focused sweep. Not enough to confirm a weapons release. More than enough to change the room. Possible radar lock quality indication. Nobody says the word attack out loud across the formation, but it is already present in the space between consoles, between bridge reports, between the people watching those 3 aircraft redraw the sky around a multi-billion-dollar strike asset and 4,000 sailors. 0622. The third Iranian fighter closes behind the first 2. The second jet settles into a cleaner attack bearing. The carrier group stops evaluating a provocation and starts evaluating an attack profile. Inside Combat Information Center, the symbols on the tactical display stop behaving like aircraft conducting a reckless passage. Their spacing tightens, their headings steady. Their speed holds rather than bleeding off after the first run. That is what changes the room. Not noise, not elevated voices, geometry. The trailing Iranian fighter is no longer trailing. It drops lower, slides inward behind the other 2, and begins constructing a 3-axis problem around the carrier group. One jet remains wide to starboard. One cuts closer across the formation's front. The third now presses from the rear quarter, building overlapping approach lines that force every escort to divide attention without losing the composite track picture. That is not theater. That is coordination. On the carrier's bridge, the update from CIC arrives in a level voice. 3 contacts maneuvering with intent. Attack profile assessment rising. Nobody repeats it. Nobody needs to. The deck stays under tight control. Crewmen hold low behind fixed cover. An outbound helicopter evolution has already been cancelled. Ordnance crews hold their positions. Unnecessary motion is eliminated. In a compressed environment under aerial pressure, clutter costs reaction time. 0623. The lead Iranian jet snaps left, then right. Not enough to break away, just enough to drag sensors and eyeballs toward the carrier's starboard side. It is a standard pressure move. Pull the formation's attention, force someone to shift too early. Invite a defensive network to show its hand. The second jet uses that moment to descend further, so low that its radar return flattens briefly into the sea clutter before rising back just enough to stabilize as a firm hostile track. The destroyer screening ahead catches it first and pushes the update across the group. The cruiser to the rear takes the wider contact. Another escort holds the trailing jet. Every ship now owns a lane. Every ship is contributing to one fight. That is the actual strength of a carrier group. Not a single hull, not a single radar, not a single commanding officer making every decision. A system processing the same problem from multiple angles simultaneously. 0624. Electronic support measures across the formation log a more serious shift. The wide Iranian aircraft is no longer conducting a broad environmental scan. Its radar behavior narrows, steadier now, more directional. An operator on the carrier listens to the tone change through his headset and calls it out. Track 1. Short duration lock quality sweep. No missile is airborne yet. No shot has been fired. But the distance between those 2 facts and their reversal is narrowing at speed. On the flight deck, the sound arrives before the visual. One of the Iranian jets rips across the formation's edge, low enough that sailors feel the vibration travel through the steel deck beneath their boots. The aircraft releases nothing. The point is proximity. The point is to collapse the available decision window, to force the Americans to determine in real time whether what they are seeing is intimidation, targeting, or the final half-second before both become the same thing. Back in CIC, the tactical action officer issues the order that resets the encounter. Shift from monitor to defensive posture. Across the group, systems respond immediately, not dramatically, professionally. On one escort, a fire control solution is prepared and held. On another, electronic warfare transitions from passive collection towards selective disruption. The carrier's air wing is already being recalled. Combat air patrol aircraft that had been operating further from the formation are now turning hard back toward it, pushing speed, closing the time gap the Iranian pilots were clearly attempting to exploit. 0625. The second Iranian fighter makes the most dangerous decision of the encounter so far. It stops weaving. No more lateral bluffing, no breakaway signal. It settles into a direct, sustained run along the carrier group's outer defensive arc. Exactly the kind of clean, stabilized line that converts a fast aircraft from a harassment problem into a weapons problem. One console tracks altitude, another tracks bearing drift, a third calculates release envelope. Then something separates. Small, fast. Not the aircraft itself, something below it. For a fraction of a second, the room does not wait for confirmation. Every display shows the same thing at once. A new object in the air where no object should be. Possible release. Possible release. The words move through CIC like a switch being thrown. A forward escort reacts first, best placed, already holding the track, fire control solution already built. The order is given. The response is immediate. A defensive missile climbs out of the formation with brutal economy. No broadcast warning, no signal of intent, just the clean, cold logic of a ship protecting a carrier. The intercept occurs far enough out that most of the carrier never sees the object itself. What they see is the flash, a sharp white burst above the waterline, then fragments, then nothing. Inside CIC, the confirmation comes back in clipped phrases. Track destroyed, no impact, carrier remains clear. The first weapon released against the formation never reaches it. It never gets close. 0627. The tension does not drop. It sharpens, because now the ambiguity is gone. The Iranian jets fracture their formation momentarily, but do not retreat. The wide aircraft climbs slightly, as if reassessing. The low jet pulls off hard after its release. The third fighter, the one that had been shaping the rear quarter, starts pushing forward, angling to continue pressure from a different axis. That is when the carrier group fully commits to the fight. Not with noise, not with alarm, with precision. 0629, the formation stops operating as separate ships. It starts functioning as one machine. Data moves faster than voices. Bearings update, altitudes correct, track designations firm from tentative to confirmed. The opening minutes were about identification. Now it is about timing. On the lead destroyer, the display is no longer cluttered with uncertainty. 3 fighters, 3 vectors, 1 confirmed release point. Every ship in the screen shares the same geometry, even as each owns a separate section of it. The cruiser to port carries the higher contact. The destroyer ahead holds the low, fast mover that just released. An escort aft takes the third fighter, pressing from the rear quarter. No ship is managing the entire problem alone. That is why the formation stays composed. Confusion is being removed in real time. On the carrier's bridge, the captain says almost nothing. He watches, he listens, he lets the system work. That quiet is not hesitation. It is confidence earned through repetition. Carrier groups train for exactly this kind of moment. Not a scripted drill, not a textbook engagement, but the unpredictable overlap where aircraft, radar returns, electronic emissions, and declared intent all arrive simultaneously before anyone outside the formation has processed what is happening. 0630. High above the group, the airborne early warning aircraft feeding the network tightens the long-range picture and pushes cleaner vectors down to the surface ships. The result is immediate. The Iranian jets lose the protection of broken sea clutter and constantly shifting angles. Their movement becomes more predictable. Their attack lines stop looking improvised and start looking contained inside an expanding envelope of American oversight. That does not make them harmless. Not even close. The wide Iranian fighter climbs abruptly. Not far, just enough to drag sensor attention upward and pull eyes away from the waterline. A calculated move. At almost the same moment, the second jet, the one that has already made one release, drops lower and cuts across the outer screen again. Faster this time. Flatter. With less room on either side of the line, it is flying. The third aircraft shifts laterally, stretching the formation, testing whether some part of the defensive network will overcommit and open a gap. Saturation by geometry. Not enough aircraft to overwhelm a carrier group through sheer numbers, but enough simultaneous movement to see if someone flinches, overreaches, or leaves a seam unguarded. Inside CIC, nobody flinches. Track 1 climbing, Track 2 low and crossing, Track 3 widening aft. Maintain composite picture, copy tracking, hold solution. That is the sound of professionals absorbing pressure. Not loud, not cinematic, exact. 0631. The escorts begin the hardest work of the engagement, the kind that rarely gets discussed afterward. One ship does not fire because it can. It fires because the geometry identifies it as the correct shooter. Another does not saturate the airspace with electronic noise. It jams selectively, shaping the fight rather than flooding it. Electronic warfare operators listen for the behavioral shift that separates a pilot still posturing from a pilot building a firing solution. They hear it. A narrow band spiked from the climbing Iranian fighter. Brief, focused, enough. The cruiser on the port side transitions from surveillance to action. Fire control locks. A defensive missile launches clean, rising fast and cutting across the morning sky with no wasted energy. Most sailors on the carrier never see it leave the rail. They hear the launch report, then watch the tactical display update seconds later. The climbing Iranian jet brakes hard before the intercept closes. No detonation, no fireball, a violent turn, dumped airspeed, and a shattered attack geometry. That matters. In the space around a carrier group, forcing a fighter to abandon its approach can be nearly as decisive as a direct hit. A broken run is a spent window. A spent window returns time to the defenders, and time right now is moving against the attacking formation. 0633. The first American fighters arrive back at the edge of the engagement. They do not arrive with theatrical aggression. They enter exactly where the tactical picture requires. One pair high, one pair lower and offset, closing the cleanest re-attack lanes and the most viable exit routes simultaneously. The effect is immediate and structural. Until this point, the carrier group has been absorbing pressure and converting it. Now the pressure begins to reverse direction. The low Iranian fighter attempts one more pass. It stays close to the surface, trying to remain buried under radar angles and force another late defensive reaction. But the network is tighter now. The forward destroyer never loses the track. The airborne controller feeds continuous updates. An American fighter settles into position above and behind, not close enough to force a merge, close enough to own the approach line. The Iranian pilot reacts. Flares stream out in a rapid burst, bright white against the morning haze. More reflex than considered decision. A hard bank follows. Whatever he intended to complete on that run, he does not complete it. The pass collapses. The third fighter, which had been working to rebuild momentum for the group from the rear quarter, pushes forward to try to recover the attack's coherence. But the geometry is already gone. Too many sensors, too many prepared solutions, too many angles already closed by the time it commits. On the flight deck, the contrast is sharp and strange. Above, high-performance aircraft are carving turns through contested airspace. Below, yellow shirts kneel beside parked jets in the wind. Jet fuel hangs in the air. Heat shimmers off the deck. Nobody points. Nobody cheers. They watch the sky and keep listening to the net, because experienced crews know a fight is most dangerous precisely when it appears to be turning your way. 0638. The Iranian pilots are still airborne, but they are no longer driving the encounter. For the first time since 3 fighters appeared over the eastern edge of the strait, the carrier group is not responding to a threat picture. It is constructing one. The distinction is subtle from outside the network. From inside it, the difference is total. High above the formation, the returned American fighters hold disciplined spacing. Nobody crowds a wingman, nobody outruns the surface picture, feeding vectors up from below. One element denies clean altitude for a coordinated dive. Another holds low enough to threaten the withdrawal lanes without collapsing the geometry into an uncontrolled merge. Nobody is pursuing an outcome beyond the one the mission requires. This is containment enforced by position. Below them, the carrier group holds formation. The carrier keeps driving forward through the water, massive, deliberate, visually unchanged from the outside. The escorts continue doing what they were built for, taking fragments of chaos and converting them into trackable, solvable problems in real time. 0639. One of the Iranian pilots makes the decision that settles the outcome. Rather than using the available gaps to disengage with some operational dignity intact, he recommits. The same jet that had already abandoned one low run now comes back from port, flatter and faster than before, trying to reach the carrier group through whatever window remains before American air cover closes the last available space above the formation. It is a high-risk calculation. Maybe the pilot believes the Americans will hesitate 1 second longer than required. Maybe he believes one more pass redeems the attack. Maybe the orders he is flying under leave no other option. Whatever the reason, the geometry does not support the decision. Track 2, recommitting. Low, fast, bearing steady. Nobody on the carrier's bridge needs clarification. The recommit is visible to the naked eye now. A hard metallic shape skimming just above the sea, throwing spray shadow beneath its wings, running a line that leaves almost no margin for adjustment. This time, the response is already built before the run is fully committed. An American fighter slides across the Iranian jet's forward quarter. Not reckless, not close enough to force a collision, just exact enough to remove the cleanest approach angle. Simultaneously, an escort below holds a firm fire control solution on the same aircraft. The Iranian pilot is no longer facing one problem. He is facing a structured wall. Air overhead, missiles below, electronic pressure on all sides. Electronic warfare operators catch another sharp signal change. A brief, focused spike. Lock-quality behavior. Not sustained, not long. Long enough. An American fighter goes active. Not with a radio challenge no one in that sky would act on in time. Just a clean, professional transition from trailing to engagement authority. Above the waterline, ahead of the carrier's bow, the informal rules governing the encounter harden into something that cannot be reversed. The Iranian jet brakes. Too hard, too suddenly. Flares scatter in a bright burst as the aircraft pulls up violently, trying to claw out of the low approach it had committed to. For 1 second, it is still intact. Still climbing. Still possibly recoverable. Then the sky flashes. Not a Hollywood fireball. A sharp white-orange bloom, followed by debris and a line of smoke folding toward the water below. The aircraft does not hold together. It comes apart precisely enough that everyone watching knows what has happened without needing to be told. On the tactical displays, the track fractures. Lookouts lose the clean silhouette and reacquire only smoke and descending wreckage. In CIC, the confirmation is fast and without ceremony. Track 2 splashed, no cheer follows, no release breaks out across the net. The fight is not finished. 0641. The two surviving Iranian fighters react in opposite ways. One climbs hard, abandoning the low-altitude attack picture entirely, putting altitude between itself and the formation. The other stays near the surface, but its movement has changed character. No more clean pressure lines, no more shaped approach geometry. It is moving fast and irregularly now, looking for a way out of the engagement envelope without presenting a second clean firing solution. The American fighters do not extend beyond what the picture requires. They press far enough to confirm the two surviving aircraft cannot re-enter the fight, then hold. The carrier group has already achieved what mattered. The attack is broken. The formation is intact. There is no tactical case for converting a successful defense into a pursuit that could reopen the exposure the group just spent 25 minutes closing down. Below, the escorts continue sweeping outward. That is the detail most observers miss in moments like this. A carrier group does not conclude that an engagement is over because one aircraft is gone and two are withdrawing. It assumes the opposite until the evidence removes that assumption. Radar keeps searching. Electronic support measures keep listening. Every operator knows there could be another release, another inbound track, another aircraft still outside the current picture. 0643. The climbing Iranian fighter turns east. 0644. The low-running jet follows, pulling away across the haze above the water. The sky does not become safe. It becomes empty in a different way, wide, tense, and unresolved. Cap fighters hold their positions. The formation does not ease. Damage reports are requested and returned across the net. The escorts confirm no hits to the carrier, no significant damage across the screen, no second wave detected, not yet. On the flight deck, sailors who had been holding low behind parked aircraft and deck equipment rise back into motion, not quickly, not casually. The smell of exhaust still sits over the deck. Far off to one side, a dark smear near the waterline marks where the broken aircraft came down. Nobody stares at it. There is too much left to do. 0646. Nobody inside the carrier group is discussing who won. They are looking for what is still out there. That is how real naval formations survive moments like this. Not by easing the posture after the first clean result, not by interpreting a retreat as a guarantee. The sky above the strait has opened. But inside the group, every sensor points forward, every headset stays on, and every watch team operates as if the next contact could appear in the next 30 seconds. On the carrier's bridge, the officer of the deck maintains course and speed. No dramatic heading change follows the engagement. No visible signal is broadcast. The ship continues moving exactly as a United States carrier is expected to move after absorbing and defeating an attack, steadily, deliberately, without any indication that the mission has been altered by force. Inside Combat Information Center, the work becomes more exact. Radar operators extend their search outward from the last known positions of the two retreating fighters. Electronic warfare teams listen for renewed emissions, particularly any sign of another radar tightening into a fire control pattern. Tactical logs are updated line by line. Time of first contact, maneuver sequence, release point, intercept window, confirmed splash, breakaway headings. Every second is documented because in modern naval combat, surviving the engagement covers only the first half of what matters. Understanding it is the second. Across the formation, the escorts report in one by one. No impact on the carrier, no confirmed damage to the screen, no additional airborne threats in the picture. The words come back clean, but nobody treats them as closure. The destroyers continue sweeping at full discipline. The cruiser holds the broader air picture. American fighters remain overhead, not pursuing the two surviving Iranian aircraft recklessly eastward, but holding the boundaries of the engagement space and ensuring that what turned away stays turned away. That restraint is not passivity, it is control. On the flight deck, routine returns in layers. Sailors who had been crouched behind tow tractors, parked jets, and fixed deck equipment stand and re-enter their positions. The choreography is slower for a moment, more deliberate. Everyone has just spent the last 30 minutes inside a compressed block of time where one error, one system that hesitated, one track that was dropped, one decision made a second late, could have put burning metal across the deck of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. They do not need that explained to them. They can still feel the weight of it in their hands, in the residual tension across their shoulders, in the way they keep checking the sky even as their hands return to routine work. Farther out, one escort logs the approximate position where the Iranian jet entered the water. The formation does not pause for it. The location is recorded, the track history is preserved, the sea moves on. By 0655, the first full reconstruction of the encounter is already taking shape. 3 Iranian fighters had come in low and fast, using sea clutter, staggered spacing, and sustained speed to compress the formation's decision window. One applied wide-angle pressure from starboard. One repeatedly built the most dangerous low-altitude attack line against the carrier's exposed sector. The third helped frame the geometry, forcing the group to divide defensive attention across 3 simultaneous vectors during the most critical opening minutes. It was not random aggression. It was a coordinated attempt to create a short, violent decision window around one of the most heavily defended assets afloat. It failed for a reason that had nothing to do with luck. The carrier group never fractured into separate ships trying to manage separate problems. It fused. The escorts built and maintained a shared picture fast enough to prevent the attack from splitting the defense. Electronic warfare teams did not flood the airspace indiscriminately. They applied pressure where the geometry required it. The airborne controllers bought time until the CAP could return. The fighters that returned did not enter the fight looking for individual engagements. They entered where they could close angles, force errors, and transfer initiative. By the time one Iranian pilot tried to recommit, the sky he was flying into was no longer available. It was already occupied. That is what most outside observers misread about a United States carrier group. Its strength is not displacement, not missile count, not the number of aircraft on the deck. It is the fact that hundreds of people distributed across multiple hulls and multiple aircraft can take separate, fragmentary streams of incoming information and assemble one coherent tactical answer before the opposing force has finished adjusting its approach. 0703. The immediate threat is assessed as concluded. The atmosphere does not soften. The tempo shifts. Damage control teams complete their final walkthroughs. Intelligence specialists begin preserving sensor records for post-engagement analysis. Air Wing personnel review timing gaps and CAP positioning. CIC replays the release sequence frame by frame. Somewhere in those recordings are signatures, behavioral patterns, and decision points that will inform the next time another pilot tests the same approach against an American formation. On the bridge, the morning light is higher now. The strait is still narrow. Merchant traffic still moves through the corridor. And at the center of it, the carrier group is still underway, holding the same heading, maintaining the same formation, doing the same job it was doing before the first radar contact at 0614. That may be the clearest statement of the entire morning. 3 Iranian fighters came in fast, low, and committed to rattling a carrier group. Minutes later, one attack was neutralized on launch. 1 aircraft was gone. 2 more were withdrawing. And the formation they had tried to fracture was still intact, still disciplined, and still exactly where it was supposed to be. The question worth sitting with is this. Did the pilots who flew that morning believe that speed and aggression were enough to create genuine uncertainty inside a carrier group? Or did they fundamentally misread how fast that kind of formation converts incoming pressure into a managed, layered response? Leave your read on it in the comments. And if you want more of these encounters, where the seconds are real, the geometry matters, and the difference between a provocation and a catastrophe comes down to discipline. Stay with us for the next one.